My name is Lucielle Black, and I live in Union Bridge. And I have been here for 32 years. I moved in 1972.
Now, where were you born at? Could you tell us where you were born?
I was born on the outskirts of Union Bridge, and it was called the Priestland, called Sam's Creek. I'm sorry, it was Sam's Creek and Hawks Hill Road, and that's where I was raised as a child. And we moved from there in 1936 when my father passed away. And we came to Union Bridge, my mother and my other three siblings, which was my brother and two sisters. And we moved in with our Aunt Carrie and our grandmother. And they lived here in Union Bridge.
Could you just say something about what it was like in Union Bridge at that time? You said 1932?
1936.
36. Could you tell us something about 1936 Union Bridge?
Well, it was this, you know how the whites are with the blacks. They felt they was much better, and we had to sort of be under them. And at that time, well, really, we didn't know too much, didn't know any better, because whatever they said probably we practically done, or we had to do. And when we went to different things like the movie theater, well, when we bought our tickets, well, we had to go outside of the booth and go around the side and go up a long steps and see the movie. And of course, the whites, all they had to do just walk right in, and they went, as the seats go down, they just walked right down into their seats, but we had to sit upstairs in a little small area.
How about shopping in the stores? Were there stores in Union Bridge at that time, downtown?
Oh, yeah, there were stores. There were stores, and one of our main stores was Ingles up here on the corner where the Pizza Hut is now. And he had everything in there, and that's where most of the blacks did most of their shopping, because you could get everything in there, from meats to whatever, clothing.
Now, as a young lady growing up in Union Bridge, job opportunities, working, was there things available to you?
Well, I'm sure it was, but right at that time when I moved in here, I was about only 9 years old, so I wasn't in the working force then. Because when we moved to town, I was 9.
And, well, at 9 years old, what's one of your good memories of being 9 years old, as far as like playing, you know, having friends, neighbors? Did you, your neighbors and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, well, we had a very nice time playing with them, the girls that I went to school with. And, you know, we just played dodgeball, and we pitched horseshoes, and we did all those things. We had a very nice time. And then, of course, we went to church and went to Sunday school. And it was real nice. I had a very nice childhood. But with the blacks at that time, you was always in the back. You had to go around the back to do things, and you had to, wherever you went at, and if you went in the store, no sooner you got your things, whatever you wanted, you had to come right out. You couldn't sit down or hardly talk to anybody. You had to get your bag and go.
Now, did church play a big part? I hear people talk about how church played a big part as far as socializing and things like that.
Oh, yes. Yes, they did. They did. They played a very big part. Yes, they had picnics and socials and vacation Bible school when school was over, and that was very nice for us.
How about school? Where did you go to school at? And your teachers. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
About school? Well, now, we went to school. This was about 2 miles out of Union Bridge. And it was a one-room school. Most of the time we walked to school, but we could ride on the bus, which was driven by Mr. Howard Davis. And if we had to pay 5 cents to ride, but that's what he charged us to ride the school bus. And of course we always got there earlier before school opened, and we could play and all that in the school and outside the school before it was time to go into class. And then of course our janitor during that time was Boney Green, and he always had the floor nice and hot, and it was real nice in the school. And we did that.
And your teachers?
And my teachers, the two teachers I had was Helen Costley and Jane Breifel. And they were very good teachers, and everything was fine. And like I said, it was the first to seventh grade, and it was all in one school from first grade. We sat when one class was having their teaching, where we had to do our work or be quiet. And that's what it was then. This one-room school had seven grades, from the first to the seventh. And then you graduated to high school, which we went to Robert Moton.
Okay. Now, what were some of the things you, going back to the stores and stuff in Union Bridge, did you shop for groceries in? You said
Yes, we shopped at groceries, but really I cannot exactly remember shopping at any grocery store other than up here at Ingalls.
Okay.
And that, like I said, that was a convenient family store which sold everything.
Okay.
But I can't remember going to any clothing store or a grocery store.
Okay. Well, how about some of your neighbors? Could you tell us something about some of your neighbors? I mean, who you had as neighbors growing up here in Union Bridge?
Well, we had the Dowry family. That was Miss Edna and her family, and we were very close to them. And then I knew the Milberries, which was Dorothy Brown's aunt and her grandmother, because I used to go to her house practically every day, to Miss Annie Milberry's house, and play with Dorothy, and I would play. So I remember them very well. And I don't know if there's anybody else I can recall or not. And then I knew Miss Minnie Walker and Gloria, her daughter Gloria, we were very close friends. But I can't recall of anyone else. And then, like I said, we was out on the creek called Sam's Creek. We went to their church, the Gospel Spreading Church. I don't know what church that was called then, before that. But then we used to go to Sunday school out there, and I knew all those neighbors, Mr. Clay Smith and his family, and Christine Jones and Danny Jones, and all those, Emma, and all those people out there.
And I understand you have an interesting story about your father and the buggy when you was a young child.
Yes, my father had three ways of transportation. He had a spring wagon, which he drove to work, which he worked at Lehigh. And then he had a buggy, which was a two-seated buggy. And then he had a surrey. And this surrey was our transportation on Sundays when we went to church. And of course, back in those days, when you went to church in the morning, sometimes you stayed all day because they had different things in the afternoon and you didn't come home till evening. Well, of course, we would play and what have you. And as you know, as children, the minute you get in a car or get in a buggy or get someplace and start riding, on your way home, you go to sleep. So I would go to sleep as soon as I got in the car, in the buggy, and so would my sisters and brothers. But when it was when we got home and time to get out of the car, out of the buggy, surrey rather, that she would call, my mother would call and say, "Get up now, so almost we're home." And they would get up and hop out the buggy and go on and start in the house. And I wouldn't get out the buggy because I said I'm sleeping, I can't walk. And my father would have to carry me in, and they would get so angry because they had to walk and I had to be carried in. And I would do that all the time. So that was a lot of fun too because, well, I really was sleepy. And I just said, I'm not gonna walk. So I would cry and kicked and stomped and all that canter that you do, you know, when you're a child. And then I was carried in. So when you get carried in all the time, we've got to walk. So that stayed with me. You know, a lot of things when you're young will stay with you, and some things won't. So sometimes I couldn't remember hardly anything. And as a child growing up, because when my father passed away, I was only 9 years old, and so many things at 9 I can't even remember. Well, it's been such a long time ago, because my father passed in 1936, and I can't remember that far back.
Okay. Um, I heard mention also of, is it your grandfather, great-grandfather that was in the Civil War?
No, I don't know.
The harp gentleman?
Oh, maybe my grandfather was. So I really don't know, I don't even know that.
Could you tell us something about the clothes that the ladies wore when you were growing up that you remember?
Well, most of the ladies wore long skirts or long dresses, and then when they did their housework, they always had an apron. Years back, they always wore apron. Whenever they cooked or anything, it was the apron. The apron was as long as a dress. And it was tied in a sash in the back, and everything was nice and starched and stiff, you know. Their clothes they kept nice because they washed them, and they washed them in 2 sets of waters, the bluing and then the other rinse water. They starched them. They made their own homemade starch, and they were just always so nice and bright and clear and pretty. It wasn't this wash and wear like we have now. Because nowadays, I don't think there's too many people that aren't, because they usually have to wash and wear clothes. But the clothes that you would iron looked so nice when they came out and wore them, you know. Because, you know, people would get 2 or 3 baskets of clothes where they would sprinkle them and fold them down in a basket and then sit at the ironing board and iron all day long. And the clothes look so nice. Now that people don't know what an iron board look like, because I don't hardly myself.
You say women always wore a hat on Sunday to church?
Oh yes, everybody, every lady in church had on a hat. Now I go to church and hardly anybody has a hat on their head but me. But I like my hats and I wear them. Okay. And then also with our hair, we had to have someone to straighten it and curl it, and it wasn't perms and what have you then. And of course, that would only last about a couple of weeks, and then it would go back to the normal texture, and you had to get it done over again, and that was a long process, because when your hair was wet, well, quite naturally, it kind of draw to your head, and it took a lot to get it straightened out. And then they curled it, but when it was done, it looked very, very nice.
I know Union Bridge was a train town, like a lot of the towns in Carroll County. Could you say something about the trains that came to town?
Yes, because the trains, when they ran, well, a lot of the people that worked, well, that was their transportation of getting to Westminster, because a lot of the people worked in Westminster, and especially my sister, Lillian, well, she worked in Westminster, and she rode the train, 8 o'clock train in the morning, and came back in the evening. And then I think it came back, I don't know whether it came back 5 or 6 in the evening, but I know it left here at 4 in the evening if you wanted to go to Westminster at 4 o'clock or be down there by 5 or 6. And then it would come back about 7. But in the morning it would go around about 8 o'clock. And a lot of the people that worked, well, that's how they got their transportation. Because a lot of people back when I first moved in Union Bridge, they didn't drive. Because it was years ago, nobody drove but the men. The women didn't know anything about driving because they didn't want to drive. But the men took the women everywhere they went. So nowadays it's different. The women go on their own. But a lot of people years back didn't even drive because the man figured that was their job. That they take you where you want to go. And if they feel you didn't want you there, well, you stayed home because they had to take you or what have you. So it was a man's world way back, but now it's both sides.
What do you like most, or what did you like most about growing up in Carroll County, and what's some of the things that you liked the least about growing up in Carroll County? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, now growing up in Carroll County, I think I liked everything that went on because I didn't know what was going to come up next because this is what we knew from childhood, from birth. And of course now when these leaders are out now making things better for the blacks, it wasn't like that back then. It wasn't nobody to come forward and say like the Martin Luther King did and all those men to say that we were going to break the barrier. And we just had to deal with what we had. And it was just same as everyday life to us. Because, you know, we didn't have all this years back and say we're going to do this and we're going to, which is great because I think it's wonderful. What these men has done for us, it's been great. But years back, was none of that said. Nobody stepped up to the plate. Now, does that make sense?